Want to welcome everybody out there on YouTube and here in the headquarters of the Pima County Republican Party to our Wednesday brown bag. Those of you who've been with us before know that we have a candidate every Wednesday to come speak to us and speak on YouTube about his or her campaign. And today we have Daniel Wood, who's running for the opportunity to beat Ann Kirkpatrick in CD3. Excuse me, Raul Grijalva. I made a mental note on the way in not to make that mistake. And it's Raul Grijalva in CD3. That is certainly an opportunity that we look forward to every 2 years. And we're happy to have Daniel stepping into that breach this year. So, Daniel, it's all yours.
Thank you, sir.
Speak to us and your audience out there on YouTube.
Thank you. So, yep, I'm Daniel Wood, running for CD3 against Grijalva. A little bit about me real quick. I'm a Marine Corps combat veteran. I've been a former law enforcement officer and currently working with Bulletproof Securities as an executive protection agent. I'm married. I've been married for 18 years now. I've got 3 boys, Clayton, Eli, and Christian, and my wife homeschools them. So it's nice to see going back to law enforcement. As a law enforcement officer, I did 1 year in school police, and I want to encourage folks to let's get some of our kids back to school. We've got to get them back. It's tough for these kids right now, not having the social contacts with their other friends. Yeah, I'm starting to see it more and more out there. I want to encourage y'all to let's look at that and go back to school. But yeah, so I want to. I don't know if any of you are on my Facebook, but last night I had the opportunity of going to Back the Blue. It was a really good event. There was quite a few people that showed up and really enjoyed it. It was awesome. We had a young kid there. He had his whole police suit on, and Tucson PD motorcycle officer came up and stopped and let him get on and not ride his motorcycle, but let him get on his motorcycle and play with the horns and everything. It was really nice. And I say that because I want to cover this real quick. Being prior law enforcement officer, I'm worried. They're trying to push defund the police, and I don't understand that. Why would they want to defund the police? Yeah, we've had 1% of officers that have done things they shouldn't done, but I'm gonna tell you, the 99% of those officers out there, we're good, and we hold each other accountable. Unfortunately, some of them get away for a little bit longer than normal, but you know what? When they do get caught, they get held to a higher standard. And I just, want to encourage folks, there are good officers out there, and we're there to do a job, and that job is to protect you. And you know what? They're being attacked. Then they need our protection. They need us to stand up. There were quite a few folks, but we need more people out there letting them know that we're behind them. And just so you know, these officers, as an officer, we're there to, if you get in a wreck, who's going to be there to pull you out? If there's a domestic call, your neighbor's hurting his wife or something, you call, who's going to be there? It's going to be us. We're going to be there. If there's a hostage situation, I've done a hostage situation while I was on the SWAT team. We were there. We were able to do the job in such a way that got folks out without any harm. That's what we specialize in. Unfortunately, there's times where we can't, and we have to, make split-second judgments, but that's okay. We will do what we have to do and do it to the utmost professionalism. And I know a lot of you out there see that and respect that. But I reiterate, we need to get back behind them. We have politicians right now that just, man, I tell you, they're politicians of lawlessness, and we need law and order. And so from that, I just want to encourage you, stand up for them. Whether it's on Facebook, if you can't get out in one of these rallies, that's fine. Stand up on it for them, on Facebook, Twitter, so on. Let's continue to back them and let them know that we're there for them. A little bit about me. I also work for maintenance work in a Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. And I'm saying that because something that really affected and impacted my life was I was going through NICU doing some maintenance on one of the rooms and fixing some things. But as I was going through NICU, I had the opportunity to see a young baby. He was just over, I say, 21 weeks old. I could fit that baby in my hand. And that made me realize how precious life is. And I realized beforehand, but it really opened my eyes to the fact that, these are babies. They're human beings, and yet we push for abortions and stuff. I just can't see that. I'm pro-life. I'm from the beginning. I'm just, to let you know, babies are precious, and a lot of people, they don't cover when we talk about pro-life, they don't cover the abortion side of it, how 900 African American babies are aborted a day, or how the abortion process and how much money is made off of body parts. I mean, this is not good. This is not good. We've got to stand up for our children. That God made us fearfully and wonderfully and unique each, and we're taking away from these children having a future, being the next president, being the next doctor, and we got to fight for that. And I just say that with that. So I worked the riots as an executive protection. I was protecting the individuals who got right in the middle of the riots. And I say that because I had the opportunity to watch peaceful protests get taken away from groups like Antifa and other organizations at that time would go in and take away from the peaceful protesters. They would set them up to the point to where they got involved after the fact that the peaceful protesters got to where they were going, which was the Phoenix PD headquarters. And then later on that night, after having their own meeting somewhere else, Antifa comes in, excites the crowd, gets them all worked up, then starts throwing, frozen bottles and stuff at the police. And when they did that, what happened is the police had to respond to protect themselves, and so flashbangs and throwing out gas, pepper balls, and then these guys who were exaggerating, who was aspirating it, would run to the news right away. And you see this? They're firing against peaceful protesters. No, they're not firing against peaceful protesters. They're firing against people who are attacking them. And unfortunately, the peaceful protesters got caught up in it. And then at that moment, you see all the peaceful protesters, they would leave, and what was left was the domestic terrorists. That's what they are. Heck, it's frustrating to see that, but that's what they are. And so they would stay behind and continue to fight and agitate the law enforcement and just make a big scene, then just start destroying. I mean, they destroyed the city. I watched it. It went into Scottsdale, so I watched it in here. But I say that because, again, they took away the First Amendment rights, our rights, from the peaceful protesters. But later on that night, I'm going around and I'm seeing the businesses. The news wanted to see the businesses and see what was destroyed. The amazing thing was there was business owners right there in front of their businesses with firearms, and those who had their guns, those businesses that were standing, they didn't get touched. So when our First Amendment rights get taken away, we see that our Second Amendment rights, how important they are. How important they are to not only protect our businesses, but each other. And so I want you to look it up. So I'm running against Grijalva. He wants to take away our rights as far as Second Amendment, and they're taking away slowly our rights as a First Amendment. And they're saying that these riots, they're peaceful. They're peaceful. No. He knows what's going on. He knows this is an insurgency, and he keeps on trying to make it seem like it's peaceful because he's deceiving the people. And so we've got to stop that. We've got to stand up to this and say enough's enough. So you can go in the chat, and if you have any questions, just ask. You can ask some questions in the chat. Just type it in, and I'll do my best to answer for you. Just wanted to pass that on to you. Other things I want to look at: immigration. Immigration is going to be important. Everybody knows that we have to secure that border. A lot of folks don't realize what's going to happen here soon with Brazil. Brazil is coming up. They're a little worried about Brazil folks coming up, and for medical and things like that, because their country's kind of falling apart, and they are struggling with medical issues. And where the best way to go is they're going to come after us. But here's the problem: we've got to protect ourselves because those medical issues are they're coming into our country. So we need to continue with that border wall. We need to continue that way and to protect ourselves, not just that way, but also against illegal immigration. And we need to work for legal immigration. It is something that it's part of our history. It's part of our nation is bringing in immigrants, but we do so legally. Also want to go at looking at the medical insurance, things like that. I want to be able to go in and definitely get rid of Obamacare. It's destroyed a lot of folks. It's taken away their health care. It's made it more expensive. You end up in the surgery. So I had health insurance before Obamacare. It was awesome. I had injured my back. I got hurt and had to have surgery. Because I had good health insurance, I didn't have to pay but $1,000 of a $150,000 surgery. And then all of a sudden Obamacare happens. My monthly for my whole family, Blue Cross Blue Shield PPO went from $250 to $300, $400, all of a sudden jumped to $700. And so I couldn't afford that, not on a law enforcement pay. And so I had to get rid of it. Well, recently my wife broke her foot and we had to go to the emergency room, no insurance for her. We didn't even know how much it was going to cost. So 3 weeks later, it cost us $3,000. And, whereas it would have cost us with good health insurance, probably $100 for the visit. And that's too much. It's too much. And I say that also going into with healthcare, we're pushing for, transparency, price transparency. We go and try to get our food. We know what we're paying for. But yet when we're trying to take care of our bodies, we don't know how much we're paying for it. Why is that? It shouldn't be that way. We need to look at price transparency more than ever. We also need to look at regulations. Regulations for the healthcare system. It really pushes the price up, and we need to look at that and do away with regulations. Less government. Plain and simple. Less government. I have government insurance, VA, and I'm gonna tell you, they control how I get taken care of. And if you want to continue, we're going to have that. We're not going to have a choice of, maybe we open up, cross-state competition between insurances. That would be great. We could do that. It'll bring and therefore we have that and less government. And then with, regular insurance, we're paying that $100 for that visit or $20 for that visit instead of, going to a visit and then the doctor's telling us, well, because of your government care, you can't be seen here. You have to go here, then here, then here. And then everybody knows how that is. It's frustrating. Education. Last night I was at Back to Blue and I got to talk with some of the folks who are BLM. And talking with them, it just seemed like they were taught to speak a certain way, and it was more. It really was of just hate America, hate law enforcement. There was no rationale to it. I mean, it was just, what is going on here? And the thing is these were college age kids. And I looked at that and I look at it as being a school police officer and seeing and learned that in public schools, they were teaching our kids to just take tests. They weren't teaching our kids to think for themselves. They weren't teaching them really much of science or math. I mean, even the math they teach them, my goodness, it's nothing like we were taught. It really is. It's just that Common Core, or even, similar studies to Common Core, just really destroying the education of our children. We need innovation. We can't teach our children anymore from 1970s. We're in the 2000s, and we need to change that. And we also need to get our government out of the system. Our government pushing their way in with even sex education to the point that they're saying, hey, it's okay to have sex. It's okay to do these things. And it's not, it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that way. It isn't okay for children to have sex at a young age. This is what happens when, that leads into abortions and more abortions. And so they think it's a fun thing. And it's supposed to be a beautiful thing for marriage, and we need to get back to that. And again, get the government out and get them just completely out of it. Our parents should have the choice of where their schools are. It keeps our low income stuck in terrible schools, whereas those of us can afford it, we get to go and have nice schools. Where we need to make sure that we bring in school choice for even those in low income, and so we can bring up the quality of schools in our nation. And not only that, let's look at bringing back constitutional studies, and just really focus on what America is about. We've had our faults, but we have grown from those. And for some reason, this last generation, our Democratic Party has just taught them that instead of, hey, look what we come from and look what our nation, how great our nation is because we've overcome these things. They want to continue just to make it seem like we're all racist and we hate each other. And that's not the case, folks. That's not the case. One more thing I want to cover. Human trafficking. I cover that. Not many candidates talk about it. Not many politicians talk about it. But I think it needs to be talked about. And here's the reason why. It's a $36 billion industry. And that 36, this is just America now. This is just America. $36 billion goes to human trafficking. Now, 40 to 50% of that human trafficking comes through the Arizona border. I can't stress to you much. That is a lot. And I'm giving you numbers that we just know about. That's not the numbers that we don't know about. That's not the numbers that are crossing over that we don't see. The illegals, the coyotes bringing in these young women and young kids, and they turn it, where do they go from there? Well, they get caught up in the human trafficking, even other things. And it's, when you look into it, it can be very hurtful. I started looking into it a little bit, and there was things I saw. I couldn't sleep for 3 days. I just couldn't sleep. It really messed with me. And I say that to caution you to, when you do look into it, be very careful, because it is a very dark world. It is evil to its fullest. And for years now, we have had politicians in the state of Arizona. I don't know if they've been turning a blind eye to it, but they know how bad this is, and we can do something by securing that border. That's a big start. It'll knock down 95 to 98% of the crime coming through, then give us more strength to have our law enforcement fight against this. And then we can add more officers and continue to fight. But there's even more things that goes into this. Goes into, they come after our children, even in something that's called Pornhub, and that is not good either, because that brings in the child pornography and things like that. So we've got to fight against those things. We've really got to fight against those things. At that being said, I would like you to open it up for questions. If you're able, if you know how to use the chat, come on up and ask some questions. I'd appreciate it.
I have one. Raul Grijalva called for a boycott of Arizona businesses with an economic impact of $140 million. What will you do to bring economic security to Arizona?
Well, we're going to have to do regulation cuts. I mean, there's a lot of regulations against business. I got to meet with a business owner yesterday with a brewery company, and a lot of the stuff that they deal with is regulations. They keep on piling regulations on them. So we've got to cut the regulations. Our businesses know how to make money, and they can't make money if our government's involved and continues to get involved. So we've got to back off of the regulations and bring the freedom of, the economic freedom that without government it brings. So that's one way, just bringing that in, and then maybe doing some things as far as incentives that, hey, they take in their money and adding it back into the economy with schools. Let's get maybe foundations for young men and women who can't, get outside and pick their schools. So there's little things we can do, taken away from the fact that I would, definitely regulations. Yeah.
So about the message, obviously, we're the choir. You're preaching to the choir here. What needs to happen in Arizona because it is a blue state, or has traditionally been blue. Hopefully it's turning a little purple. We need to talk to the swing voters and the independent voters and explain this to them, because the news isn't doing it. The news doesn't tell the truth. How do we do that? How do we get that message across? Because a lot of times the left, they just shut you down when you're talking about the First Amendment. They won't even listen. The people from BLM that you spoke to, they had their mindset. I'm sure I've tried to speak to people like that, and they don't want to listen. They just want to tell. So how do we get to the people that we might have a chance to enlighten?
So I've been going door to door. I've been going out. I've been on, since this is, me running, I've been on Facebook, Twitter, and everything. The word is getting out. The news wants you to think that it isn't. That 1%, like the Black Lives Matter and Antifa, they're a very small percentage. There is a silent majority. I'm telling you, there is. I can't stress that enough. That silent majority makes up Democrats and independents, and it's a large silent majority. Just the other day, I get a message on Facebook from a Democrat who told me they got their ballot and they wrote my name in over Grijalva. Well, because what these Democrats are doing, what these Democrat politicians are doing, they're revealing their true colors. They're revealing what they want, and they don't like America. And it's obvious being shown with what they're doing with the police and the slow jabs that they put in with their sponsors or co-sponsors of bills, to where it looks good on the top surface, but if you look at the fine print, it's just jab after our First Amendment, Second Amendment, all of our constitutional rights. So there is a silent majority. It does involve Democrats. And so you look at the walk away the movement, that's a Democratic movement, and they're walking away from the Democratic Party. If you look at the black vote, it's tremendously growing, because they're seeing that the Democratic Party are the party of racism. They are the party that just doesn't care about America. And they're waking up to this. They are the party. If you look at all these places where the riots are happening, they're happening in Democratic zones. Oh, by the way, Tucson is Democratic, mostly Democratic. And so we're looking at them trying to do the same thing that we have in Minnesota, and so things like that. And so going back to that, this stuff is waking America up. The only issue here is America's that silent majority, and then that word silent. We've got to stop being silent. I can't stress to you folks how important it's going to be that you finally start standing up. Those of you who are saying something, or you are reaching people on Facebook. You're reaching people. If you do say something out in front of folks, don't argue with them, because it's going to do no good. Heck, that's even biblical. If you start arguing, just back off. But get your little jabs in of the truth, facts. That's all you can do. Truth, facts. And if they start arguing, just back off. You said your piece and leave it at that. That's how we're going to be able to do this. Is, again, that's another part of this generation, is they've been taught on emotions instead of logical thinking. And so, it's frustrating. It's frustrating to see that. I learned as a law enforcement officer, I learned how to reach this generation as a school police officer through emotions, but bringing it around to logic and facts. And once you're able to do that, it's amazing how they wake up to what's really going on, and you can open up a dialogue. Actually was able to open up some sort of a dialogue, but then individuals stepped up and emotions got involved, and that dialogue was lost. So I had to walk away, because once that emotion's involved, you can't. There's no talking. Yeah. But here's the thing: I end it right there. And they'll recognize that. They'll recognize, hey, I talked to that guy. I was able to have a conversation with him, and that will make a change one way or the other. Those individuals will recognize that later on. They will think about that, and that's how we're going to do this. Is we're going to have to take the higher ground and put our facts out there. But then when it gets into an argument, we got to walk away. We can't let our emotions get to us and then ruin the situation. So getting the word out there, and the silent majority stop being silent. If you would please stop being silent. You have power. We, the people, our Constitution was meant for us. It wasn't meant for politicians. It wasn't meant for big government. We are supposed to be the big ones here. And until you realize that, this is going to continue to get worse. This is not me trying to put fear out there. They don't want us to have they don't want us to have the power. They want to stay in power. They want to stay in control. Look at all that's going on. You see it for yourself. So, yeah.
Along that vein, a lot of times I hear CD3 is just lost. There's no hope. There's no reason to do this or do that. What do you say to that, despite the voter registration differences? What do you say to those who just count you out automatically because you're not?
And I see that where I go, but then I start talking to folks and they realize. So walking by faith is seeing something there that isn't there. And here's the beautiful thing is I have been walking by faith with this. I am a man of faith, and this is important to me. The reason why I'm doing this is I do feel the Lord's calling me to do this. What better person to do this than a former law enforcement officer when you have a border that's just wrought with crime and such. So as I go, like I said, I've been out the door to door, and I'm seeing these folks. I'm seeing Democrats, independents. I'm seeing Republicans. They won't change. They're screaming for change. They're screaming for change. It's just a matter of getting people to realize that change is there, and that this guy isn't this giant. He is not he isn't a giant. Oh, by the way, I don't care, but with God, he took a pebble and took out a giant. So, anything's possible. We are at the time right now. This is the time. If you get my name out there, let people know that I'm just here for you, this isn't a politician standing in front of you. This is a Marine who fought for this country and is scared. When I see places like Minnesota look like Operation Iraqi Freedom, I literally am worried for that, and I want to fight for this country. This is our kids, your grandkids. This is all that. And again, it goes back. How are we going to do this? All of us got to stand up. I can't represent you unless you stand up. I can't. How am I going to represent you if you don't stand up? Again, we, the people, was put in there first for a reason. It was there for a reason because that's what it is. It's our God-given right. This Constitution is our God-given right. The first, second, third, fourth, all these amendments are our God-given right, and we're not standing up for them. We're not. We're not. And I just really, yeah, that's about it.
Any other questions? Well, I do want to thank Daniel for coming. Remember, that's Daniel Wood, CD3. And once we get past this primary, you'll be squaring off against Raul. And that's when the big work will start. Give your website address.
So DanielWoodForCongress.com. That's another thing. Well, the number 4. So if you look up, you could plug in 4, but if Daniel Wood, the number 4 for Congress.com. If you're able to, I am looking for contributions. $20, $100 will get me about 7 signs and gas to go around and make sure I meet everybody down in Yuma, San Luis, so on. And this is very important to get our name out there. This is how we're going to do it. The news ain't going to help me. Radio is not going to really much help me. It's going to be me going out there, meeting the people, going door to door. I did so yesterday. Me and my son, we went to 70 homes yesterday, just going. And this is what it's about. This is a fight, and we're going to get it. DanielWoodForCongress.com. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, sir.
Good to have you.
Yes, sir.
Take care out there in video land. Okay.